What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're here with City Commissioner out of Orlando, Samuel Ng. He's here today to speak to many of you potential voters that he's running for mayor. So, Commissioner Ng, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Well, thank you so very much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
So, I read up a little bit about you that you spent 30 years on the Orlando Police Department. So, how was that experience?
It was a great experience. As a matter of fact, my father also served on the police department during the time I was there, as well as the first two black police officers that were hired in 1951. So I had the pleasure of serving with those guys before they retired, and now they have since gone on.
Wasn't your father got up to detective? He was the first detective?
Yes, he was the first black detective with the Orlando Police Department, and he was the first black officer to ride with a white officer, and this was in 1968.
All right, so in the time climate in Orlando around that time is a little bit after the civil rights movement.
Yeah, it's still kind of slow because remember 1951 was the first two black officers, Richard Jones and Belvin Perry Sr., and that's 1951. So between 51 and 68 is when things begin to open up a little bit, because see, those black officers could not ride with any white officers at all.
Yeah, so you basically had to patrol the black community, correct, at that time period?
Yes, that was your area. And if you ran across a white person that was violating the law, you couldn't arrest them. All you could do was just hold them there, call for the white officer to come and pick them up, and then they would take them to jail.
That's very, very interesting about that time period. So now you got out of the police department, you ran for city commissioner at first, or you ran for another seat before you became city commissioner?
Well, I retired in 2003 from the Orlando Police Department. And in 2004, I ran for mayor of Orlando. There were 5 candidates in the race, and I finished third. And so obviously I didn't win. And then in 2006, the commissioner's seat became available for District 6 in the city of Orlando. I ran for that. There were 5 of us in that race. And it came to a runoff between myself and former city commissioner and county commissioner Mabel Butler. And I won in the runoff election and have been reelected ever since. So I've been serving for 13 years as a city commissioner for District 6.
So in District 6, what is the demographics of your people there?
Well, it is a diverse area. We have African American communities, we have Haitian communities, we have whites, we have some Hispanics, and some people from Brazil. So it's very diverse, and it goes from near downtown Orlando west to Metro West Boulevard, Metro West Community, and also International Drive, those portions of International Drive that are in the city. Universal Studios is in my district, so all of Universal Studios is in District 6.
Okay, so now you're going to run for mayor. Why should people vote for you in the election coming up in November?
Because I have a heart for the people. I have a true heart for the people of Orlando. And I'm running for mayor because there is a lack in public safety and neighborhood policing. And so I want to bring a better perspective of policing and community policing and neighborhood policing to our police department and our community so that we can have a better relationship between the people. And also there's a lack in our infrastructure because in a lot of our underserved areas, we're not getting the same types of benefits that many of the other areas are getting, many of the other neighborhoods are getting. So they're getting improvements in streets, but we are not. And so we want to make sure that it's a unified effort to make sure that Orlando is taken care of in all of our communities. And that's another part that I talk about, and that's called inclusion. And seeing people talk about a united Orlando, well, Orlando is not as united as you would think it to be. If it was totally united, we'd have economic development in our areas and we'll have prosperity in our areas. And so we want to improve upon those things too. And there are other areas where there is lack of police presence. And we want to improve that as well, because I like to see police stations in these underserved areas.
Well, I'm hearing you mention a lot about, policing. Now, will the police, would they be hired from the actual communities themselves? Because who better know the actual community than those actually from the communities? You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And that's always been my philosophy, not only the police, but also firefighters, those first responders. Because when you do get persons from the community, like from which I came out of Murchison Terrace, public housing area. And knowing that that was my roots, and knowing that I had an opportunity to go to other areas after being in Murchison Terrace and growing up, I've always remembered where I came from. And that's what's important. A lot of the people know my name. A lot of people knew my father's name. My father died this year, January 12th. And so he was 85 years old. So I've lost him, and I really kind of dedicate this campaign towards him too. Because many times I would come and visit him at his home, and he'd say, "Hello, Commissioner, how are you?" And the one thing that I would miss is hearing his voice say, "Hello, Mayor, how are you?"
That's, having a father in your life is a beautiful thing. It's definitely nothing like it. But I got one more question about the police before I move on to something else. Now, there's a lot of people in the African American community are very leery about police officers. I'm pretty sure you know that. I mean, being a police officer about 30 years or so. So what can you do to bring back trust and confidence? Because a lot of people don't even want to call the police because they feel that they're going to be criminalized for calling the police themselves, or, act like they're the ones that's the criminals, and when they say, "Look, I called you for help. Why are you harassing me? I mean, I need the help in this instance."
And it's about mutual respect. See, that's what I gave. I gave the people respect. And a lot of times we have younger officers that are approaching senior Black members of our community, and they're not treating them with total respect. And so that's when you have the rub between the officer and the person. And what the officer needs to do is recognize that you have to give respect in order to get respect as well. As a matter of fact, I remember even an incident when I was out there on the force, and I had to take down a person that's a little bit larger than I was. And so, yes, I was struggling with him, got him under control. But during that process, I was surrounded by people in the community. Within that circle, there were others that were watching my back and making sure that nobody interfered with what I was doing. So this is the kind of relationship that we have to build. As a matter of fact, when my father was living, I remember as a kid that people would call into the house to speak to him, to tell him about who robbed who broke into whoever's house or business, or who killed who. So the relationship has to be such that it is a mutual understanding between the police and the community. And the best way to do it is to get out into the community. You can't just drive through, or you just can't answer calls for service to go in and take a report and then leave. You've got to build relationships. You've got to stop when there is no call for service. You've got to stand by the stores. You got to stand within the shopping centers. You've got to get out of the car in the communities. Even if you're at a basketball court and there are young boys or men playing basketball, get out, talk to them, even shoot a couple of baskets yourself, just to show that you are a part of that community. And that's what I would be instilling. And then also with the police substations, especially in the Black community, ever since I've been a city commissioner, I've advocated for a police substation in the Black community. and it fell on deaf ear. It fell on deaf ear. The mayor wasn't hearing it. He wasn't supporting it or anything of that nature. But as mayor of Orlando, I will make sure that there is a police substation within the Black community, because many of our seniors, they need our help. They need our support. And I visit them and I talk to them, and they tell me everything that's going on within the community. But see, we have to protect them. They have to feel like the police has their back. And that's important to me. And police officers need to know and feel that the culture of the police department is being responsible to the people in which we serve. They also have to be aware that they are the first line ambassadors. People like yourself coming into Orlando and you run across a police officer, they're treating you with courtesy and respect. And that's important. Yes, they have to watch their back as well, see who the criminals are, etc. But you're trained for that. Not everybody is a criminal, and that's the whole key.
Well, the idea about, police substations, I know they do that for sure, that I know of here in Houston, but I only kind of seen that in the area, more so the Asian community, maybe Chinatown area. They have a Houston Police Department substation right there, and their cops are actually them from their community. So you don't really hear any problems over there. So I do agree with that the Black community do need that. I think they need substations where the police officers come from the community. They know everybody. They can respond to some issue or problem. I think it would actually keep any issues actually down if you had substations and people, from the actual community. So I hope you can actually implement that. But let's move to the area of jobs, because jobs is always very, very important with the community. What would you do to bring more jobs to Orlando?
Well, and economic development is one of my key areas as well, and especially within the Black community, because we've got to continue to entice and give incentives and opportunities for developers to come in and develop in our community. See, they don't want to come in because of lack of police or lack of fire protection. And so we've got to have that formula that fits well within the community so that they are welcome to come in and to invest. And we're doing some of that now, even as commissioner. We're doing some of it now. We've got a neighborhood Walmart, grocery store that's in our area. We've got a 7-Eleven's 7-Eleven service station and convenience store that's in the area now. We've got an AutoZone that's coming in the area as well. But we have to do more, because with that, when we do more, we're going to bring in the developers. Developers are going to come. And I also would love to see African American Black developers come and invest their money in our community, because many a times we're always relying on the other guys to come in and invest. But we need to take ownership in our communities as well. And so when we do those things and we provide incentives and we provide tax credits and those kinds of things to entice the developers to come in, then we can grow our community a lot more. And we've got to bring in some affordable housing too, because with affordable housing is going to come opportunities for people to be able to be close to where their jobs are. And they'll be able to go to these jobs, work those jobs, and then come back to their homes, which is right in the area. And that's really important, because, Orlando is the #1 tourist destination in the world. So we've had, since 2018, the last year's statistics, we've had 75 million people to come in and visit Orlando. And that's huge. And so our hotels in the area, they are thriving. They are really progressing, but they hire a lot of people. Those service employees are very important to them. But to have some good, adequate transportation to help them get to those jobs is also important. And also, even on those jobs too, we've got to encourage our business owners to step up the minimum wage and the living wage for our workers because they are working 2 and 3 jobs trying to make it. And when rents are high, it's a real problem. So yeah, you're providing shelter for your family, but now how are you going to clothe and feed them and also pay for medical care? So all of those things are important too. Even from a jobs perspective, we want to be able to help our communities thrive. I love seeing Black businesses come in and develop and operate a little bit more than what's happening now, but you've got to feed them the right opportunity to be able to settle down in our communities.
So in the area of those business owners, you would like them to possibly raise, pay. Now, would you be willing to give them, more tax cuts or some sort of incentive to do so?
Well, I think from their profits that they already have, see, they aren't really sharing their profits. And this is where the employees can really benefit because when they do more for their employees, they've got a dedicated employee. So we wouldn't have to do anything as far as any benefits for them because they've already got the profits there. The profits are reeking high within a lot of these organizations. And even when you look at Disney, I think Disney now is reaching out to up their minimum wage to like $15 an hour. And that's important. Some McDonald's have already done it as well because they have the profits that are already in place to be able to do that. So they wouldn't necessarily need any incentives from us, any public dollars to do that. But they are already having those funding to be able to support that.
Now, also, listen to you earlier. Now, you have small businesses. You mentioned the Black community. One of the biggest issues that Black people have in their business is capital. So would you be willing to create maybe some sort of grant program for already established small businesses where they can grow?
Well, absolutely. And specifically not only grow, but help to reinvent their buildings. And the reason I say reinvent their buildings, because sometimes it takes a little bit to help in remodeling the front of the building, inside of the building, so that the public feels like this is a great place to be. So that's important to me as well, because when you provide those types of grants and opportunities, that investment into their businesses help them as well. And it gives them some assistance from the city. We do a little of that now, but I think we need to do more specifically within our Black community, because a lot of the other areas, they have the opportunity to make more money, if you will, so their profits are higher and their profit margins are higher. But they too also get incentives to help them with their businesses as well. So we can do more in our Black community to help them a lot more than what we've done in the past.
So what are the things that you are running on, kind of issues that maybe that you feel is important to you and why people should vote for you as mayor? I know we talked about the police department, we talked about infrastructure, we talked about jobs, we talked about small businesses, but what other things that you are running on as well?
Well, and we've kind of talked a little bit about roads and infrastructure, but roads are very important because we're riding over potholes all the time, drainage problems. When it rains, it floods on our streets, and even underground piping in the city of Orlando in many areas are over 100 years old. And so even on Orange Avenue, which is one of the main streets in downtown Orlando, we've had several occasions where the pipes have burst and a big crater has opened up on the street, and one car got stuck in a crater and couldn't move out because of the pipe that had burst. And so what we have to do is find ways to go in and do X-ray on a lot of these streets to find out where the potential problems are, where we've got piping that's getting ready to burst and explode in the city of Orlando. And that's important because it carries our water, it carries our sewage. And a lot of times, too, we have pipes that burst and the lines get into our lakes. And that's an environmental issue. And so we have to deal with those and make sure that they do not happen. You know, when it does happen, yes, we're on it to kind of repair it, but we need to prevent it from occurring because now our lakes are involved. And then we have to make sure that the water quality is safe for the people. So roads and infrastructure and even our intersections, when pedestrians are looking to cross the roads, we have to make sure that the crosswalks are nice and brightly painted so that people can see, specifically those that are in vehicles, can see that this is that demarcation for pedestrians to be able to walk across an intersection. And then even for the pedestrian light, to allow them to cross intersections, because some intersections are large, we need to give them more time to be able to cross the street. They shouldn't have to battle between the car and themselves to get across the street. And then in some cases, when we look at intersections, once a person, and this is part of Florida law, steps into that crosswalk, that motorist must stop and yield to that pedestrian. But a lot of people don't do it. So we need to do some public service announcements to make sure that the people get the message that you've got to watch out and care for the pedestrians as well as the bicyclists, because they're having to battle traffic in order to get through. And then another area too is an inclusive Orlando. I want an inclusive Orlando. I want an Orlando where we can feel free to appreciate one another and see where Orlando talks about we are a united Orlando. It's not totally inclusive because, again, certain areas get more of the economic development and resources than other areas do. And I want to equalize the playing field so that all communities, I want to see a seamless community. When I come from an affluent community into a underserved community, I want to see it clean. I want to see litter off of the streets, and I want to see graffiti off of the traffic boxes. All of those things are important to a community because when you have those things, that means that there are problems in the community, crime tends to come in, and property values tend to go down.
So let me ask you a question. What would be your policy on the homeless?
And that's a very good question and concern because, you know, even being on the police department, I was responsible for a team that of police officers that went out with psychiatrists, psychologists, and they were in the area dealing with our homeless population. Because a lot of the homeless, too, not only is it mental health issues, but it's a problem with being able to pull your bootstraps up and to get back into society. And so they just need a hand up and a help up, if you will, and not just necessarily feeding them, but feeding their mind. And I think that's what's important too in dealing with our homeless issues. And we have to be able to provide opportunities for them that are able to work to get back into the employment field and to do things. Many of the homeless people want to do something to help. And as a matter of fact, hygiene is important too, because that's a health issue. When we have problems with HIV that's out there, and we have problems with the measles and mumps that are creeping up around the United States now. And so we've got to make sure that the homeless is very well taken care of, and to get them out of the woods and into some single family homes. You know, I've done a lot of that when I was with the police department and working with a nonprofit organization that actually purchased a hotel and turned it into single family homes for many of the homeless people, to bring them out of the woods, bring them off of the street, and to public housing or housing that will help them and make them secure in their own surroundings, because we don't want them to be victims as well. We don't want them to be victims to theft, and we don't want them to be victims to any bodily injury where somebody is fighting them, stabbing them, or shooting them. We want them to be safe in their own environment as well. So we'll be doing a little bit more. I know we have the Homeless Coalition and the Homeless Commission that's in place, but we have to be a little bit more aggressive in addressing that homelessness problem within the city of Orlando.
Now, are you opposed to people going out and feeding the homeless?
Oh no, because I support a lot of the churches that do it and other nonprofit organizations that do feed the homeless. That's important. As a matter of fact, there's a group called Food Not Bombs in the city of Orlando, and they've been feeding in the parks. And they've also been feeding just outside of City Hall. But I know of church groups that go out to meet the homeless where they are to feed them. But what I would love to see is when you do meet the homeless and feed them, that you do clean up the area, because that's important too.
Yes, because they got to have a clean city. Like I said, that is definitely a health issue. So, Commissioner Ng, let me ask you a question before I wrap up. Could you tell the people why should they come out and vote for you? It's November the 5th, correct?
November the 5th, 2019.
Okay, so all registered voters, you need to listen to this. Why people should vote for you?
Because I am an inclusive person, I am an honest person, and I'm an open person, and I am very trustworthy. I am an individual whose arms are open to receive everybody, and I'm an inclusive individual. I deal with all aspects of our community and not just one particular group. And I am one that you can really trust. You can believe in me, you can trust in me, and you will feel and know that I have a heart for the people of Orlando and the people that visit Orlando. And see, when I talk about that ambassador position and relationships from a police perspective, it's because I've lived it. I practice what I preach. And I want to make sure that our police department is one that the people feel very trustworthy with, and that relationships between the police and the community are at their best, because we are a united community. And in order to be united, we have to trust one another. You can believe in me, you can trust me. And transparency is another issue. My government would be a transparent government. See, it's time out for politicians, I would say, that are running for office that have been in office far too long. And what I'm talking about is term limits, and especially for the city of Orlando, because they don't have term limits. 13 years I've been commissioner, and I know that after those 13 years, it was time up for me as commissioner, and it was time for me to move to the next level, which is the mayor's position in the city of Orlando. So it's time for me to move up. And from that perspective, as mayor of Orlando, I have more control. We do not want to create any type of kingdom in public government. And see, and that's what the United States is all about too. And that's why even with the President of the United States, it's term limited to 2 terms. Now for the city of Orlando, you can do 2 terms or 3 terms at 4 years a term. But at the same time, it's time to open up a new era of government. And that's what I plan to bring to the city of Orlando, a new era of government.
Now, ladies and gentlemen who definitely live in Orlando, make sure all of you are registered to vote. I believe in making sure that all of us can vote, because a lot of people went through a lot of things to make sure that we can do so. Participate in your local elections. Local elections will affect you more than anything else on the federal or even the state level. So, Commissioner, thank you very much for joining us on the show today and letting the potential voters know, where you stand on particular issues that may be important to them. And we hope that you win in November.
Well, thank you very much. And please, the next time you're in Orlando, make sure you look me up.
I will do that.